Hi there, this is Keith. Are you ready to start getting the very best out of every employee in your business? The only way you can do that is by truly managing their performance. But up until now, that meant performance reviews, and you know that performance reviews suck. If you're like most businesses, you've tried performance reviews and stopped them because you know they suck. Or maybe you were like me and you tried them, stopped them, tried them again, stopped them, and finally stopped them because you know that they not only suck, but are counterproductive. Or maybe you continue with them because you know you need to somehow manage the performance of your team and you have no idea what else you can do. Well, there is something else you can do. In the next 40 minutes, you'll discover exactly how to get rid of demotivating and counterproductive performance reviews. And you'll replace them with motivating, inspirational, and most importantly, productive personal development interviews that get the performance that you want. Shortly after developing my Make You Happy management system, we had a friend over for dinner. That's not us in the picture. I'm a bit older than that. My wife had told her that I'd been in Florida and Michigan and giving presentations on my management system, so she asked, "Tell me about this management stuff you're doing." She was retired from Boeing, and I knew they had performance reviews, so I said, "When you were at Boeing, you had performance reviews, right?" She rolled her eyes and said, "Yes." I asked her, "What did you think of them?" She replied, "They sucked." You need to understand that Mary is one of those people who wouldn't say the S word if she had a mouthful, so I knew I had the title for this presentation. Performance Reviews Suck. I speak to a lot of groups, and I often ask, how many of you have been on the giving or receiving end of a performance review? Most of the people in the room raise their hand. Then I ask, how many of you like performance reviews, think they're motivating, and that they lead to the results that the organization wants? Once in a while, a hand or two will go up, but most often, no one raises their hands. Shortly, you'll discover why performance reviews not only suck, but are counterproductive, and I'll introduce you to personal development interviews. Just listen to what they're called. If you're on the receiving end, which would you prefer? Being reviewed in hindsight or being developed? What if you're the manager? Which would you rather do? Review someone in hindsight or develop them? Which would be more rewarding and get better results, reviewing someone or developing them? If you've ever been on the giving or receiving end of a performance review, you know they suck. Everyone hates them. They're demotivational, discouraging, and most importantly, they don't lead to the behavior that you want. Performance reviews are like trying to drive your car by looking in the rearview mirror. As the parent of a teenager, can you imagine getting the performance you want from your kid by having an annual performance reviews? Would every 6 months work? How about quarterly? Your employees cannot be scarier than a teenager, but you may be wondering if you really need a performance management system. Think of it this way. Let's assume that you're driving an automobile and that you want to be 50 miles down the road in 1 hour. It's important that you be there at a specific time, and you cannot go above the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. There are no other detriments. All you have to do is drive. Your automobile is mechanically sound. You get in the automobile and you start to drive. You can do that, right? It's easy. All you have to do is average between 50 and 55 miles an hour, and you'll be there on time. Now, let's assume that before you start the trip, someone gets in the automobile, takes out the speedometer, the odometer, and you don't have a watch. They remove the radio and take down all of the signs along the way. They've taken away your feedback system. And you know that this road is notorious for having the most effective speed traps anywhere. And if you get stopped, you can't make your deadline. Now, how do you feel? Do you feel the anxiety and the frustration? Do you feel the frustration your team feels when you say, go get those goals, but with no supporting system in place to make sure they're getting feedback and taking the necessary corrective action to get there? Here's another way to look at it. When you're in sales, your prospects and potential prospects represent everything you can possibly achieve in your sales position. If you're good in sales, you cultivate those prospects, you consult with them, you listen to them, you try to do what's right with them. You ask questions that gets the prospects to identify her needs, and when the prospect identifies her needs, the salesperson shows the product or service as the vehicle to satisfy that need. If you're in sales and you have 5 or 6 prospects and they're the only prospects you have or could hope to have, and you know they can give you all of the success you've ever dreamed of, how would you cultivate them? You'd try to find out what makes them tick, right? What are their needs? Once you show them that your product or service can fulfill those needs, you're set. The exact same thing takes place when you're in management. The people you manage represent everything you can hope to achieve. When you find out what their needs are, like the salesperson, you show them that the job is the vehicle to satisfy those needs. Once they see that they can satisfy their needs through this job, they're motivated. In the next 40 minutes, you're going to discover exactly how to manage your team in 1 hour a week and get the very best out of each and every team member. When you do that, you'll have the time to spend on the important things in your business rather than mundane, everyday issues and problems. You'll stop being the King Solomon decision maker and empower your team. You'll stop fighting fires and fixing mistakes. My friend and mentor, Dan Kennedy, says, the purpose of being in business is to live your life the way you want to live your life. But you and I know it's not always like that. Like you, I'm a business owner, and I've been there in those same conversations when you get together with other business owners and share your pain, the agony of trying to get your employees on the same page, functioning as an effective team and at a high level as individuals. In short, getting things done consistently right the first time. But unlike most business owners, that endless loop of conversation, I did something about it. In the business I sold last December for millions more than similar businesses, we delivered 46,432 orders to 8,645 clients in 12 months. And every single one of those clients got this message from me many times throughout the year. If we ever let you down, please call me at 800-426-5708 right away so we can make it right. If you're still not happy, call me on my direct line at 253-859-7310 so I can make it right. If you process 200 orders a day, would you dare do such a crazy thing? I did, and I could because everybody, all 60 employees, were on the same page, functioning as an effective team and functioning at a high level as individuals, getting things done consistently right by system. And that's my challenge here for you today. If you wouldn't dare put yourself at the mercy of close to 10,000 customers calling you directly if unhappy, then you need what I'm offering here, and you should be listening very closely. Here are some statistics about business owners. 70% report that they don't have enough time for their children. 82% check their email while on vacation. 95% work more hours than a normal job. 60% report being on the verge of a nervous breakdown. 72% are ready to quit, and 62% have a headache, neck ache, or pain and difficulty sleeping. How many of those people are living their life the way they want to live their life? The night before I talked about my management system to a large group for the first time, Grant Miller, the owner of Sun Your Buns, asked me about the system and what I was going to talk about. We talked for a bit, and he said, "You're showing business owners how to live their bucket list now, not waiting." I said, "I guess I am," and that's been the focus of this presentation ever since. The bucket list is the story of two guys that had terminal cancer and how they escaped the cancer ward and tried to live their bucket list before they died. And you know what? That happens far too often, especially for busy business owners. I'm here to tell you that you don't need to wait to live your bucket list. In the next 40 minutes, you'll discover how to live the life you want to live now and live your bucket list now and make a lot more money doing it. Since I developed my management system in 1992, I grew my original business about 15 times and had a huge distribution centers in Seattle, Denver, and Honolulu. I added 4 more businesses, and for the last 20 years, I take around 10 weeks vacation a year. And last December, I sold my first business for millions more than similar businesses, and I'm financially secure for life. I made that cash register big because that was fun. Most of us think we're building a business that's going to be worth some really good money someday, and for most people, that day never comes. I can tell you it's really cool to look at your bank balance and see 3 more digits than you've ever seen before. I was able to do that, live the American dream, because of what I'm going to share with you right here. This is the guy who guilted me into bringing my system to market. He's in my mastermind group in Seattle. His name is Jeff Heiss. Jeff asked me one day, how did these local chapters for GKIC come about? I told him that, among other things, I think that Dan Kennedy, the founder of these groups, wants to leave a legacy of being the millionaire maker. He wants to have that Napoleon Hill type legacy. It's part of what he wants to do, and he thought that these local groups were a great way to bring that about. As we talked, I told Jeff that I don't have a need for that type of legacy. The only legacy I want to leave is I want my family and very close friends to say, I'm really glad he was part of my life. That's the legacy I want to leave. Because he knew I had my management system that gave me total control and freedom, and he needed something like that, he said, if you developed that management system, you could do that for other families. I couldn't get that out of my mind, and while I'm not going to get all spiritual on you, I prayed and I decided to go for it. By the way, Jeff was the first person to invest in my management system, and his business has tripled in 3 years. So we're talking about living your bucket list. I'm going to take about 2 minutes and share with you some of my bucket list. But what's really important here is that you think about your bucket list in this next minute or two. This is our house in Seattle area. That's Carson and me on the 4th of July a few years back. That's my bucket list. This is last winter at our house in Montana. This is Whitney at 2 years old in her tutu. She actually started skiing 2.5 years ago at 22 months, so now she has the family record for being the only skier to start before she was 2 years old. If you take nothing else out of this, take this. Tie some of your bucket list to staying in shape as you get older. Here's one of these for me. My daughter Jenny and me sitting at the summit at Downey Mountain, about 30 miles from our Montana home. I'm the black blob sitting against the tree. We skinned up from 5,000 feet to 8,000 feet, skied down to 7,000 and made some loops. It's awesome doing that with your daughter, but you better stay in shape. So now I eat right and stay in shape to live my bucket list with Jenny, not just to stay in shape. Here's another one of those. I want to ski Exterminator with both Whitney and Carson. Exterminator is called Exterminator for a reason, and I don't ever want to pussyfoot down it. I want to ski it with Whitney like it deserves to be skied. It will be about 7 years before Whitney will be able to do that, so I'm going to have to stay in great shape. My job is also my bucket list, doing the things in my various businesses that I want to do, doing the things that really make a difference and not working on menial, mundane duties and dealing with crap, and living my life the way I want to live my life. My goal for you and all of my clients is to make you irrelevant to your business, at least to the day-to-day and then the week-to-week and then the month-to-month operations of your business. A number of years back, I went on a 3-week Mediterranean cruise. I told our operations manager what cruise line I was on, the name of the ship, and said, if you need to contact me, you'll have to find me. For about 15 years, I'd never gotten a phone call while I was on vacation. I knew I wasn't going to get a phone call, so I didn't need to give her any more information than that. A few years ago, I ran into a tree while skiing. I had a helmet on, but still suffered a level 4 concussion. I was out of commission for 4 months. I did really stupid things and, in fact, signed away my legal rights to make business decisions. When I came back 4 months later, things were running fine and had actually improved. And again, that's my goal for you, to get your business running so well that it improves continually with or without you. Now you are free to live your life the way you want to live your life. But it's more than freedom. It's also wealth. When it's time to sell your business and you're critical to the business, what is it worth? It isn't worth squat. But what if you're irrelevant to the operations and in fact the business gets better whether you're there or not? Now what is it worth? A lot, and I just got to experience that. In fact, my biggest challenge recently was choosing a wealth advisor. I love that kind of challenge. I met Vince Zerpoli in 2005 and learned about performance management powered by personal development interviews and knew immediately that I found the alternative to worthless and even less than worthless, demotivating and counterproductive performance reviews. When employed properly, an effective performance management system permeates the organization with a philosophy of catching people doing things right. Most businesses focus on catching people doing things wrong. Catching people doing things wrong is called management by exception. When businesses utilize management by exception, they're watching for people to do things incorrectly. As a result, they stymie creativity in the organization. If every time I do something wrong, the boss catches me, but he doesn't catch me when I'm doing things right, then I fail to take steps out in front and really help the organization grow by using my creativity. Conversely, when we start catching people doing things right, we encourage empowerment. People start to do things in the organization. Productivity improves on an ongoing basis. So the whole organization doesn't just come from management, but from employees and management interacting together and working together. People are picking each other up, and the organization is permeated with a motivating environment. The second benefit that comes as a result of an effective performance management system is that you create a learning organization. Researchers tell us that as we move forward, people are going to stay with organizations where they have an opportunity to grow and learn. There are going to be many more skilled positions than there are people to fill them. And if there are a lot of skilled positions and not enough people to fill them, money is not going to make the difference. Money is going to be a given. You're going to have to pay in a competitive market to get good people. But they want to work in a place where they can grow, where they can enjoy themselves, where they can use their creativity to help the organization grow, and that happens in a learning organization. Before we discuss personal development interviews in depth, it's important to understand a couple other concepts. The first is that in all organizations, systems have at a minimum influence and at a maximum control over behavior. It's critical to understand this because if you don't, you'll take a Band-Aid approach to correcting situations rather than finding out what system is controlling the behavior and changing it. The problem with this is that far too often the system being used is not really the best way to do things, but simply has been handed down from one person to the next over time. Have you ever played the whisper game? One person starts by whispering a secret at one end of the group, and the secret is whispered from person to person until it goes around the entire group. It's amazing how the original message has changed by the time it gets all the way around. Now imagine if that message was the wrong message in the first place. In other words, on the job, that particular duty was not done correctly in the first place. The second concept is that of the 5%er. If you look at any organization, you'll find that about 5% of the people are self-starters. They're self-motivators. They join the organization and management says, go in that direction, and they go in that direction. They plan, they organize, they motivate themselves. They control their activities, and they go in that direction. They do a super job. A 5%er is often selected to move into management. You're likely a 5%er. When 5%ers move into management, they're told that they have to coach, motivate, train, and develop people. And their automatic response is, no one had to watch me, no one had to tell me how to do it, I just did it. They don't understand that they're managing 95%ers. The 95%ers are good people, but they need coaching, leadership, development, and follow-through. The key is that the manager has to understand this and understand that he is more than a manager or a director. The manager needs to be a trainer, a coach, a facilitator, a developer, a motivator, a counselor, an administrator, and many more. With that said, it's critical to understand that all development is self-development. You cannot develop another person. You cannot motivate another person. You can create an environment in which they motivate themselves and you facilitate their development. As you facilitate their development, you have to know that you cannot be the know-it-all guru. Managers who believe that they have to be the know-it-all guru don't develop people. You want your team to use their creativity. You want to empower them. You want them to come up with the ideas. You teach them the process that leads to the objectives you want. Once they've proven that they can get the results, it's time to turn the process over to them. You may be like a lot of business owners who were 5%ers. Because of your work ethic and knowledge, you became dissatisfied working for a large organization and decided to start your own business. Many businesses are very successful entrepreneurs until the management systems they learned at their old job catches up to them and creates similar frustrations in their own business. But now it all comes down on you. That antiquated management system of catching people doing things wrong was never designed to work in small businesses. And the management system itself, is the reason you and your fellow business owners are all in the same boat, continually wondering why you can't get everyone functioning as an effective team and taking individual responsibility. You are managing in one of two ways, and neither works. You are either managing using management by objectives, which is taught in every business school and handed down to small business owners, or you're winging it. I call this management by hope and prayer. Well, I'm a big fan of prayer. It's not an effective management system. The sad truth is that MBO was never designed to work for small business owners. But they don't tell you that in business school. I know I graduated from the University of Puget Sound School of Business, and they certainly didn't tell me. MBO was designed to work in large public corporations, taught in universities by people who have never worked in, let alone run a small business. Anyone who's ever been in that corporate rat race knows that those corporations thrive off the back of middle-level managers who are willing to give up their home life, sell their souls, become slaves to the company, and work 80 hours a week to get the next promotion. But guess who's doing that in your business? You are. You and I both know that you could have succeeded in that corporate rat race. Heck, you could have been the CEO. The key to fixing this is having an effective feedback system. What is an effective feedback system? Each person needs to have goals and objectives. There have to be strategies and tactics that are going to be employed to bring those goals and objectives to fruition. The manager has to receive continuous feedback, letting him know what kind of progress is being made, and there has to be an adjustment when the individual is not making progress. Adjustment and corrective action that gets the individual back on target. It's a complete system. You use this type of system every day. When you drive to a morning meeting, you use this system. You set a goal of getting to the meeting on time, and you develop strategies and tactics. You get to bed on time. You set your alarm to be ready to leave by a certain time. You determine the route. You get feedback from your speedometer, your odometer, and your watch. If you think you're going to be a little late, you step on the gas and get back on target. That's an effective performance feedback system, and we all utilize it every day. When we don't employ it completely, we don't have an effective system, and then we're subject to the environment as to whether we achieve our goals or not. Every member of your team needs to have goals with effective feedback, and there has to be an adjustive and correction action taken along the way. Here's how lots of businesses develop. The entrepreneur, who is, of course, a 5%er, becomes unhappy working for a big organization. So he starts his own business, and he works all kinds of hours. Time means nothing to him. He wants to succeed. If he could work 50 hours a day, he'd work 50 hours a day to reach his goals. Initially, he surrounds himself with like-minded people who buy into his vision, who agree they can make something out of the company, and who work very hard. After a period of time, without realizing it, they start to put on 95%ers. The owner doesn't realize that he's putting on 95%ers because if I sit down with you, anyone, they're going to say, hey, man, I can do a great job. I can really get out there. I work hard. I solve problems. And the reality is, once you get to a certain size, you need 95%ers. 95%ers make up great warehouse people, accounts receivable, accounts payable, and more. Again, the 95%ers are good people, but they need management. They need coaching. They need help. The business owner may begin to see shrinking margin, plateauing sales, high turnover, poor morale, poor quality, declining market share, resistance to change, or, most importantly, their own self-burnout. What does the entrepreneur do when he sees these problems? Again, he takes that Band-Aid approach. Morale's low. Let's have a party. So we have a party. Everybody's happy. Have a few drinks. That may alleviate the problem for a short period of time, but not long after that, the problems are back again. Or let's give everybody a raise, which does help for a short period of time, but the problems come back again because the problem you see is not the actual problem. It's a symptom of an ineffective performance management system. These are symptoms of problems, but not the real problems, because if an effective performance management system is in place, these problems are minimized or eliminated. But by addressing the symptoms, you only postpone the inevitable. So the entrepreneur has one of four choices. If margins shrink too low, he goes out of business. If you're not making money, there's no point to staying in business. In lots of organizations, the manager loves the business and he shrinks. It becomes a small business where he works 100 hours a week. He works very hard, but he's in complete control. It's a centralized organization where the owner is wearing many hats. He's the marketer, he's the accountant, he does a number of things, but he stays in business. Lots of managers don't want to make the change. They don't want to do what they have to do to change their organization and to functionalize it into a growing organization. So they sell it prematurely without making the millions of dollars he needs to be financially secure for life. Or he changes the system of management. The system of management with centralized control is no longer applicable. People have to be empowered. Delegation has to take place within the organization, and he has to take a systematic approach to it. There has to be systems in places that challenges everyone, develops everyone, and focuses on the goals that you're trying to achieve in the leadership of the company. An effective performance management system has 7 components, and if you understand these components and employ them, you can't fail. The personal development interview, objectives, objective-focused activities, feedback, measurement, reinforcing, and coaching. We'll go over each of these. The personal development interview is the powering source for an effective performance management system. PDIs need to be held regularly and scheduled weekly, every other week, or at the very least monthly. In areas where you want to see a lot of change, a lot of improvement, have a lot of opportunity, or have challenges, you'll have them more often. In other areas that are very much under control, you'll have them less often. Typically, the lower the job function, the shorter the meeting. Initially, don't expect to be an expert at PDIs. You have to work on it at a continual basis. So often, people expect change to happen overnight. It doesn't. We change in tiny increments, and that's one of the purposes of the personal development interview. The PDI is where you'll catch people doing things right. It's their opportunity to brag. That's a bit different from a typical performance review, isn't it? Your job is to pick them up, keep them excited about their job, and discuss corrective action. When you're discussing corrective action, it's critical that you frame it properly. When you frame it properly and sandwich the corrective action between positive reinforcement and catching them doing things right, you'll see improvement that you never dreamed possible. But how much time does all this take? When I talk with business owners about personal development interviews, the first question is always, who has the time for that? Here are the facts. Before I sold my biggest business, I conducted PDIs with the 6 people who reported directly to me. I met with each person every other week for about 20 minutes. So on average, I spent 1 hour a week in PDIs. Now, after I sold my biggest business, 3 people report directly to me. I have PDIs with each of them every other week, and they average about 20 minutes. That means I manage my entire team in 30 minutes a week. I spend the rest of my time working on the important things that grow my business and the things I want to work on, the things I enjoy. Research has shown that the average executive interacts with subordinates at least 37 times per week, 2, 3, 5 minutes at a time. What if you and your subordinate got in the habit of discussing only critical issues right away and left the others for your regularly scheduled PDI? You'll find that PDIs actually free up time for you and your managers and your entire team. As I mentioned, for the most part, you don't want to be the know-it-all guru during PDIs. No doubt there are times when you have to be the know-it-all, for instance, when you're working with a brand new person and they don't know the processes. But shortly after that, it turns into a meeting in which you're eliciting ideas from them. You're priming the pump to help them. Each week, when they realize that you're giving their ideas consideration, they'll get better. When the interview is running properly, the interviewer, you or your managers, will be talking about 20% of the time, and the subordinate will be talking 80% or more. Sometimes the manager only talks 5%, but these managers know what questions to ask, and they're guiding the individuals. They're facilitating growth. Let's assume that you or your manager is having a PDI, and the subordinate comes up with an idea that you know won't work. As I said before, you need to frame your response. If your response is, that won't work, they're going to close their mind. But what if you responded with, well, that could possibly work, but what will happen if? And then you introduce the reason you know it won't work. Maybe they've thought about your objective and found a way around it. Now 2 people have grown. If they haven't found a way around it, they'll come back with, yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Now it's time for the manager to ask, how do you think you'll solve that problem? The responsibility for finding the solution lies with the interviewee, not the interviewer. This is the way people grow in an organization. Another key to effective PDIs is that the person being interviewed should leave pumped up, ready to go after every interview. Your job as the interviewer is to make sure they're pumped up, ready to go, and achieve their objectives. The only time they should leave a personal development interview disappointed is when you're ready to fire them. I need to tell you, I didn't believe that at first. I didn't understand how you could get the behavior you want without constructive criticism. But when I practiced what I learned from Vince, I was blown away, and that's why I teamed with Vince to give you this. The reality is, if you can send them out of that meeting feeling good about themselves, not falsely, but because they've achieved something, they've learned something new or made progress towards a goal. This means you're moving in the right direction. Just imagine what happens in your business when every team member leaves pumped up, ready to go, and take on the world. Everyone in the organization must have objectives, specific objectives, and those objectives have to relate to where you're going as an organization. If they don't relate, either directly or indirectly, to where you're going as an organization, then you have to ask the question, do we need this position? But you cannot manage objectives. You can only manage and measure objective-focused activities. This is critical, so I'll repeat it. You cannot manage objectives. You can only manage objective-focused activities. You can manage the activity in which someone engages. When they say they're going to finish a project on schedule, that's an activity. At the end of the first week, you want to know where they are on that. How are they doing? Are they on schedule? You can't wait until the project is supposed to be completed and then find out. Without adequate feedback, you're managing by circumstance. You're putting out fires. You're not managing by design. When you're getting feedback, you're reading it and taking necessary corrective action. This is very much like that trip you want to take 50 miles down the road, but you don't have a speedometer and you hope you just get there on time and you don't get a ticket. You'd never consider that. Think of how many times you look at the speedometer and take corrective action, maybe 2-3 times each mile. What's so different about your organization? You need timely feedback in order to coach, facilitate, and lead people. You and your managers give and get feedback on objective-focused activities during your personal development interviews. When you look at the statistics and trends and measurable deficiencies, you're in a position to take corrective action, not based on subjective thoughts, but on actual facts that you can share with the individuals. When they see the objectivity in it, they accept it. But you can't just measure the end results. You need to measure the activities leading to that end result also. You need to measure to identify strengths and weaknesses. You can then find out where the problems are and address them. As managers, we must set priorities. People respond to areas where their supervisors show concern, but that concern needs to be continuous. It can't be sporadic. You can't sit down and say, you're doing a terrible job in this area, and then talk to them a month later about it. When there are issues that need to be addressed, it's important to bring them up in the right manner. You can say to a girl, when I look at you, time stands still. Or you can say, you have a face that would stop a clock. One of these gets the results you want. One of them gets you punched. You can bring these things out in a negative manner that creates pushback or in a manner that makes progress. Reinforcement. This is creating the motivating environment during the personal development interview by catching people doing things right. Here's one example of how reinforcing properly works miracles. When you're sitting down in the interview with someone and you say, hey, Ben, tell me how you did that. You did a good job. Tell me how you did it. Ben wasn't watching himself do it. So he gives you a combination of what he perceived himself doing, and he kind of mingles it in with what he thinks you want to hear. That's good. That's not bad. It's good because now the words come out of Ben's mouth. His behavior begins to change in order to conform to the words coming out of his mouth. It's like magic. They bring what they should be doing up to a conscious level and walk out of the meeting saying, that sounded pretty good. I think that's the way I'll do it. That's the way behavior changes, and it changes in almost insignificant increments from week to week. You can't see it, but if you take a look from January to June, substantial behavior change takes place. The more behavior change you want, the more opportunities to improve, the more often you conduct your PDIs up until once a week. The manager has many roles. Sure, you're the director, but you're also the leader, coach, counselor, motivator, trainer, administrator, and many more. In addition, whether you like it or not, the performance of individuals is often affected by domestic problems, and you need to help individuals get through them. This picture shows the wrong way to conduct personal development interviews. You don't want to sit on the other side of the desk when you conduct PDIs. Sitting on the other side of the desk portrays authority. I'm the boss, you're the subordinate. Generally, the best way to hold the interview is by having the employee sit on the same side of the desk as you. You don't want to portray authority. You're a coach, you're a guide, you're a motivator. You want to help them grow and develop. Now, I'm mostly a black and white kind of guy. There's good, there's bad, there's right, there's wrong, there's proper behavior, and there's stupid behavior. You succeed or you fail, and you don't blame someone else. So when I heard the term situational leadership, I thought, holy cow, another feel-good, politically correct excuse for not performing. I was wrong, way wrong. Remember how I told you that you need to train people and develop them? This is one of the tools we use for that. Relationship behavior is the extent to which the leader engages in two-way communication. In other words, your interaction with people. High relationship means you're highly engaged. You're giving them additional training and support on an ongoing basis. You're interacting with them frequently. Low relationship behavior means you're not as engaged in two-way communication. Task behavior is the extent to which the leader is engaged in spelling out the duties and responsibilities. High task behavior means the manager is more detailed and directive towards telling the subordinate step by step what to do. Low task behavior is when the manager assigns the task, delegates the task, and is not involved with actually getting the job done. A new employee typically starts out in quadrant 1, and the manager does a lot of telling. High task, low relationship. There's a lot of instruction showing them how to do the job. You're not patting them on the back yet because they haven't shown anything yet. You're teaching and training them, so there's not a lot of relationship behavior. After a few months, the new employee is making some progress, and it's time to move from telling to selling. High task, high relationship. The manager is still directing and showing, but the communication is more two-way. The manager gives a lot of reinforcement while explaining, clarifying, and persuading. The manager is mining for ideas from the team member and teaches them to think on their own. The leader still defines the roles and tasks, but seeks ideas and suggestions. The leader pats them on the back. The more you can guide them into thinking things out for themselves, the more beneficial it is to you in the future. As the individual grows, it's time for the manager to move from selling to participating. High relationship, low task. The person understands the job and knows how to do it, but he doesn't have a lot of confidence yet. They need reinforcement on an ongoing basis until they develop confidence. The manager gives the individual a lot of support, pats him on the back, and stays very close. Because the individual knows the job, there is much less directive behavior from the manager. As the team member becomes more and more competent and becomes a true expert at the job, the manager moves to empowering. Low relationship, low task. The team member is doing 80% or more of the talking during the PDI with the manager. The manager is observing, monitoring, reinforcing, and delegating. Your goal as the manager is to get your staff to quadrant 4, but as the graph shows, it's not a one-way street. Depending on the job or task, you may move down or up a quadrant or even 2 and maybe sometimes 3. In one of my businesses, one of my vice presidents is fabulous at her job, and my management style is almost always empowering. But she's not a numbers person, so when it comes to working with numbers, my management style moves to participating and maybe sometimes to selling or even telling. It's also important to understand that you're working with people, not machines. We all have personal lives away from business, and for all of us, even us 5%ers, our personal lives influence us at work. Sometimes it's critically important to move down a quadrant when a team member has personal problems. Leaving your empathy and understanding behind, you have a lot invested in someone who's in Q4. Moving up on the relationship scale to participating or moving to selling with more direction is sometimes critical to getting that person back up to speed. So now, what's your next step? The next step is a free 30-minute complimentary consultation with me. My time is extremely valuable and so is yours, so I don't schedule a consultation unless you qualify. There are a few things you need to do to qualify for the consultation. You need to be willing to accept that with this system, your team will, as Sean Tarpening says, take ownership of problems and come up with solutions. You must be willing to empower your team. If you're a control freak, you must stop. You need to be willing to accept that there are other good ways to get things done that may not be the exact way you would do it. You have to want to develop individuals and your entire team. You will start seeing positive results with your staff after you've invested 2 hours with me. You or your general manager needs to be willing to put in that time. After the first 2 hours, you or your general manager need to invest another 10 to 15 hours to get your entire staff on board. Once everyone is on board, you and your other managers need to devote about 15 minutes per staff member for your PDIs. That means if you have a staff of 8, you and your managers will spend about 2 hours per month managing the performance of your entire team. Remember, you'll gain time in other areas, so this usually takes less time than what you're doing now. You have to be willing to expect that you will no longer be the all-knowing King Solomon decision maker who fixes everything. Now, here's what you're going to discover during your 30-minute complimentary consultation. The 3 easy steps that will have your entire staff functioning as an effective team and functioning at a high level as individuals, and in general, getting things done consistently right by system rather than by fighting fires and fixing mistakes. 2 simple things you can do immediately to make sure that everyone in your business is continually trying to do a better job and improve your business. The one thing you must do in your PDI or any meeting with a team member that ensures they leave pumped up, ready to go and take on the world. The simple roadmap to make sure every staff member is on board looking to improve your business. When we're done, I'll send you an action plan detailing each step in the process and your investment if you decide to work with me. Now, here's my absolutely crazy you can't lose guarantee. I break up your investment to make it very easy, and I charge you by the month. There is no contract, no small print, there's just my written guarantee. You can stop any time during the process and you're out what you've paid. If you complete the training and conduct the PDIs with your staff for a month after completion, and you don't think this is, without question, the very best investment you've ever made, I'll refund everything you've paid me. So now, go to https://keith11.youcanbook.me/ Got that? It's on the screen. Go there and pick a time for your free 30-minute consultation. Take care. God bless. Bye now. I once had a dentist tell me, that's 15 minutes I can't be in a chair with a patient. If your employees aren't worth 15 minutes of your time or your manager's time each month, don't even consider working with me.